I'm Carl, this is Darrell, and thank you very much for the good introduction, Jay. Today, we want to talk to you about Harmony Connect and basically why we brought Harmony Connect out. And the key behind it is the fact that we want to help blockchain get to the masses. And in order to do so, we need to make it as easy as possible for small businesses, for people without blockchain expertise to be able to do so. To kick this off, let's talk about the underlying challenges of using blockchain.
So there are kind of two sets of challenges that come with using blockchain technology. The first we're going to talk about are all the things that are technology related, right? Using a blockchain is not like any other software. Obviously, you guys know some of the differences. One of the biggest is that it's going to be distributed. You're going to have to deal with consensus and things like that. A lot of these things add complexity to being able to write software that's going to be operating at an enterprise scale that's expected to operate at millisecond speeds. So we try to handle a lot of those challenges, but naturally, there's going to be challenges that come from just any blockchain in general. One of the biggest is the fact that the data in any blockchain is going to be more or less unstructured. Anything that goes into a blockchain is a time series database. You're going to have everything coming in order that it was received. That may be great for something like a transaction record if all you're looking at is what one wallet is doing and sending to another wallet. But when you actually need to have data, that really doesn't work to just throw everything into a pile and then try to figure out what it all was. So that becomes a very serious issue. Another one of the big challenges is that writing can be unreliable when you're working with a blockchain. If you have any sort of issue where a transaction doesn't happen to get published into a block, a transaction doesn't happen to get gossiped enough and people take it up enough, there are a number of things that can happen where you don't actually get data written that you expect to have written. When you're doing a transaction and you can just repeat that, maybe not as big of a deal, but if you're dealing with something where you have to have data and that needs to be published because you need the next set to come in, that becomes a real challenge. And then of course there's the fact that smart contracts really aren't all that smart, right? A lot of times they're restricted to the knowledge that can be centered on the chain itself. You can't really deal with a lot of things that are going on in the outside world, and it's hard to incorporate those things into what you're trying to do business-wise. So because of this, there are just a number of things that when you want to have data stored to a blockchain and take advantage of that immutability, doesn't always work for what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. So there's also obviously some business-related issues with using the blockchain, one of which I think that our CFO, Zach, could talk all day about, which is the crypto woes. There's a number of things associated with that, from unpredictable cost of operation, which is probably, I think, one of the biggest issues. Any business, you need to be able to forecast your costs, right? Everyone gets a budget. Well, some people get a budget, right? And they need to be able to talk about how they're going to use that. And if you tell them you're going to come to them with a solution that's based on cryptocurrency, and they look at the cryptocurrency market, right, then there's no way that they're going to be able to use this in the real world. Another portion is accounting, right? As soon as you buy cryptocurrency until you spend it, right, you need to be able to handle the cost basis, the change over that time as to when you spend it. That is not an exciting project. Believe me, we're doing it. Then there's the taxes that go along with that as well. Again, if any of you are holding cryptocurrency and you attempted to do your taxes, how'd you do that? You got lucky if you did it right, I can tell you that. And the biggest thing I think that also comes along with it is that we're all concerned about the security around cryptocurrency, managing, handling your wallets properly. And then there's obviously the barriers to entry, and this is huge, right? When you decide that you want to get started with blockchain until you actually can use it or your team is using it, that is a very long runway. There's few experts in the field, and those experts, there's actually a recent article about this, a research, that blockchain developers now cost as much to hire as AI developers. And those are some of the most expensive developers in the field. So this is a very high cost of operation. And also environments are very costly and very difficult to maintain. You have to typically host your own node. You have to worry about the reliability of those environments. Blockchains are always having issues with stability, right? And we need to make sure that that's plausible. And the last portion is test environments, right? When you're first building something, you make mistakes, right? Blockchain is immutable. Do you want your mistakes on an immutable ledger? No, you need a test environment for that, right? So you need to easily be able to spin up these test environments and easily be able to not care about the fact that you might have made a mistake and published something there. So those are some of our blockchain challenges that we're facing today. Now,
luckily, a lot of these challenges are actually solved at the protocol level when it comes to the Factom blockchain. The first of which is going to be the fact that data that goes into the Factom blockchain is actually already structured. As I said, you really can't just have your data come into a pile and be able to use that effectively in a business. If you've ever tried to organize sand, you probably wouldn't, doesn't make a lot of sense. So with the Factom blockchain, we have a lot of things that allow you to really categorize and structure your data in easy ways. You can tag different entries with external IDs. You have everything organized into sets of chains. So really, with Factom, you're actually getting a chain of chains rather than a single blockchain of ordered transactions. So you can have, if you can imagine a chain where you have things kind of branching off and all of those things are tagged and categorized, that's sort of what Factom allows you to do above and beyond just a normal blockchain. It still has that same structure where everything is tied together by hashes, so you still get that same immutability, you still get that same security, but it's in a much more structured way. So this allows you to do a lot of complex hierarchies and all of that. And at the same time, you maintain the decentralized aspect of it. One of the most important things about blockchain technology is that they are censorship resistant. If you've been looking at a lot of things that are going on in the world today, one of the biggest things is making sure that whatever's happening, a message gets out there. There's no arbiter of truth. You don't want to live in an Orwell-like society, right? And so you have a guarantee in a decentralized system that whatever you say is going to be able to make it onto the blockchain without any restrictions.
so another thing that we solved at the protocol level is that we've improved the writing issues. One of the biggest things that we all hear about with blockchain, right, is the throughput issues, right? The age-old TPS, transactions per second, that everyone complains about, right?
Crypto kitties killing blockchains, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You don't like it.
Yeah. And the Factom blockchain is actually designed in a way from the ground up to be able to handle much higher throughput than any other blockchain. And that's because we're focused on just data, right? When you're trying to handle something very complex, right, then it'll be a lot harder to what's called reach a consensus, which is part of the problem when trying to handle high transactions per second. But when it's just reaching a consensus around a set of data that is just being stored, then it's much more doable. The next is that we can now publish with confidence on the Factom blockchain. A lot of other blockchains, they have issues where you might, publish something like a transaction, right? And that makes it into a block, but that block gets what's called orphaned because somebody else also mined that block. And then somebody else that read that block next mined the next one. And what that means is that they were able to have the longest chain. And as soon as that propagates over to this guy that mined this block, that block gets lost and the data gets orphaned. So in the Factom blockchain, we don't have that. There's no mining. And then lastly, there is a lot of value in mining, right? I'm not taking anything away from blockchains where they do have mining. Proof of work has a lot of value. That data is very strong, and we agree with that. And because we feel so strongly that that's a good approach, what we do is we take our data and we anchor it into those blockchains. So if anybody ever tried to double check that the data on the Factom blockchain is correct, they would be able to look within Bitcoin or very soon Ethereum and be able to see that our data is still valid.
And then finally, there's the issue of smart contracts. One of the biggest things, as I said, is that contracts that are on-chain tend to stay on-chain. They aren't able to access or manipulate data that doesn't exist within them. Now, as you just heard, Factom already has the ability to publish into other blockchains. That's actually a very unique ability when it comes to blockchains because generally they're restricted to working within themselves. But the thing is, Factom actually acts as a built-in oracle. If any of you guys are familiar with some of the technology debates that are going on in the blockchain community, one of the biggest issues is having an oracle that's able to publish and see in the world outside of the blockchain, right? If you're working with Ethereum and you want to make a token, that token can't actually send money to your fiat bank account. It has no way to communicate with the outside world. That token also can't necessarily see stock prices change. So you can't do a contract that says, hey, if you want to make a limit order on a smart contract, you can't really do that because on the Ethereum blockchain because it can't actually see the stock market, right? Factom solves that problem by having a built-in oracle that can do this seeing and writing with the outside world. With the addition, smart contracts on Factom are actually language independent. We use a system called state machines, which is basically rather than having all of processing happening on-chain, we actually have off-chain processing possible where all of that data and all of those steps are managed through the Factom blockchain. So this is a roundabout way of saying that with the Factom version of smart contracts, you actually have a lot more capability and a lot more ability to reach into the real world and pull that data back into the Factom blockchain and push back out. And with the fact that we're able to do that with taking into account outside resources, that means you're actually able to use any language. So you're not stuck using Solidity, you're not stuck using some boutique language that was developed specifically for a particular blockchain. You can actually use whatever language you want. You can use Java, you can use Go, you can use C#. I don't know why you would do that, but you're allowed to do that. It's your choice. It's your choice. I'm not going to recommend it, but do what you want. You can do pretty much anything you want with those smart contracts.
And lastly, on the Factom blockchain, we talked about the need for a consistent cost structure, right? For be able to forecast your costs. Genius system put in place on the Factom blockchain, known as a two-token system, in which when you want to write into the Factom blockchain, what you do is you spend what are called entry credits, which are fixed price in USD. So you buy your factoids, you attempt to, you want to write into the blockchain, what you do is you convert them into entry credits at a fixed cost, very low fixed cost, and then you can write into the Factom blockchain. So it's a two-token system, extremely beneficial, and potentially more tokens to come in the future. If you guys have any questions about capabilities of stablecoins on the Factom blockchain, definitely go talk to Paul Snow. He had a great talk about it yesterday. Follow up with him about that.
So those are all things that are solved at the protocol level, right? This is at the open source layer of the blockchain, of the Factom blockchain, where anybody can access, anybody can use and add to it. Now, there are still a lot of challenges that come with this. Even though we have a lot of structure within the Factom blockchain, we don't necessarily have the ability to search using the basic blockchain code. That's just something that's not capable with just the open source code that's available. In addition, you do have certain performance constraints. While the Factom blockchain does have a lot higher throughput than other blockchains, it does still have limits. There is still the fact that you have to go through a version of consensus. There is still the fact that you have to go through certain mechanisms in order to make a blockchain work. And those don't go away just because Factom says so. So there are some real issues just from the blockchain side that still remain to be solved.
And those same business challenges we're still facing. Whether or not the fact that now you do have a fixed cost, you're still dealing with cryptocurrency. We still don't want to deal with cryptocurrency at the business level. It's just not realistic. And we still have those barriers to entries we talked about. So what comes next? How do we solve these issues?
So this is where the Factom Incorporated comes in with Harmony Connect. Harmony Connect is our new free to initially start blockchain API that allows anyone to be able to build blockchain technology. And I mean anyone. We've actually had multiple hackathons where we've had people who are new developers, have not written a line of code before in their lives, but they're able to actually implement blockchain software. So this is a huge deal for kind of the space as a whole. We use a standard REST API in order to communicate with this. So very simple sets of commands where you can talk to an API, get your responses back quickly, and be able to do what you need to do. And we do that in order to increase the accessibility of this technology. We also index the entire blockchain. The entire Factom blockchain is indexed within Harmony Connect so that you're able to quickly search, find what you're looking for, and pull it back out with no problems. You're not having to worry about a lot of, again, the issues of trying to step through a blockchain or step through one of the chains of chains to find what you're looking for. You can quickly go straight to it. We also allow for a queuing system. So this is allowing you to guarantee that your write is going to get through. If you have, or if the entire community has a lot more data trying to get into the blockchain than it can handle, there's a spike for whatever reason in the volume of transactions or whatever happens, Harmony Connect is going to guarantee that whatever data you sent to the API is going to get written to the blockchain. Even if we need to queue it, it needs to wait in line, wait for a period, a little bit of a lull to get through some of that data. Doesn't matter. It's going to get through. And then the best part is we're going to let you know as that data is going through the different stages of immutability where it is. So when you start out and you have just data that's sitting on the cloud somewhere, it's sitting on multiple servers, fairly safe, not immutable. There's a difference when it goes from there and getting into the Factom blockchain, right? So that's something you want to be notified about. And there's a difference from when it goes into the Factom blockchain and then when it has even more anchors and becomes even more secure, right? So these are all things that we can let you know quickly using our REST API and our callback system with Factom Connect, Harmony Connect.
So with Harmony Connect, how do we break down these barriers that we've talked about? Well, as Darrell pointed out, right, we've had people who have never developed and they can start using Connect today. We make it so that you can use your existing developers and immediately get started. It really has the shortest runway to really be able to get up to speed. We start to provide some guardrails a bit and give you guidance as to how to use it, right? If you give somebody a big tub of Legos, right, and say, hey, build me the Millennium Falcon, right? They're gonna give you some probably rectangle-looking shoebox thing. But if you give them a certain set of pieces and some a guide on how to do it, right? They're gonna build you this really cool-looking spaceship, right? Well, that's what we're trying to do with Connect, and that's what we provide. We provide SDKs, we provide documentation, we provide sample apps to really be able to get people going and immediately get started. Along with that as well, we also try to provide some really easy things like utilities, right? You need utilities to be able to get going quick, and that's not something that's typically available on new technologies, but we provide things like a nice developer portal to see where you're at, and a blockchain explorer to be able to view your data live as you're building it. And the last part is the environments, right? We talked about how in the blockchain world, you really need a test environment to be able to test things out. If you write data immutably and that gets published, that's dangerous. So what we do is when you sign up, you're able to spin up the environment that you need. If you want to just be on a shared sandbox and just let other people see your data and play around, sure, go ahead and do that, that's free. But if you're a real business that is really concerned about your data, then what you can do is you can just select that you want a private sandbox, right? And that's really important because a lot of people, they want this private place to be able to play around. And that's what we provide. And that's not even just for the testing, right? Some people, even when they get to production, they want a private environment. Now, there's a lot of discussions here that I've heard a lot about where people are talking about how, oh, well, if it's private, is it really a blockchain? Well, yes, and let me tell you why. The reason why our private environments still would meet that litmus test is the fact that it's a hybrid approach. That data still gets anchored into the public blockchain, right? So all that data is still provable, and it's still a blockchain by most people's definition who are saying private blockchains are not blockchains.
And then finally, the best part, we take care of a lot of the accounting risks that have to be associated with crypto by giving you a simple SaaS platform. So you never have to actually handle any cryptocurrency. You never have to actually deal with any of the tax implications, any of the dealings of knowing when the price changes and how you have to deal with that. No worries. With the Factom Harmony Connect, you can use our system just by a simple subscription service based on how much use you're going to have and what type of environment you're going to be in. And all of that can be paid with fiat currency. Very easy for your guy like Zach that's going to be dealing with your taxes. It's going to make him very happy. You know, you want to keep that guy on your side. They're good people. They're good people, man. So we have a system that is, once again, as I said, it's free to start. You can start up, sign an account, create an account today, and get started working with blockchain technology. And then as you want to scale, as you want to be able to reach your millions and billions of users that your service obviously is going to make it out to, that's why we're all here, you're able to scale that up using a simple SaaS service.
So this talk was about bringing blockchain to the masses, right? And in order to do so, right, what we've done is we've built the foundation, made it really easy for developers everywhere to get started. And that means now the power is yours. Go build it. Go get started for free. And what can you make better with blockchain?
Thank you for your time.
If anybody has any questions?
At what point is that trigger flipped between the free subscription and when you're scaling?
Repeat the question.
So she asked, at what point do you move from the free-to-use platform to needing to have a paid subscription? So the line is going to be whenever you need to move off of the shared sandbox environment. The shared sandbox is effectively an area where you can kind of test with your code, you can implement things. The data is all going to be public, so naturally you're not going to want to have anything too private go on there. If you're going to be securing things privately, you're going to need to put a hash instead of the actual data. But it is an environment that is free to use for anyone who's using Harmony Connect. This environment is cleared on a semi-regular basis, so it's not going to be a permanent place where you can build a live application, but it is going to be a place where you can build your application and get ready to push that into a live environment. Once you actually do want to start publishing onto the actual public blockchain, that's when you come to our first level of subscription. And so that's going to be, you're using the same software, but you just flip a switch, and instead of going to the shared environment, the sandbox, you're going to the real public Factom blockchain.
Yeah, and to add on to that, when you do decide that you want to go public, it will take all of about 30 seconds for your developer to make the change. All he needs to do is change where he's sending the data to. And you need to click a button in the back end, and if you haven't entered your payment details, go ahead and do so, and you'll automatically be publishing there. So it is very quick, very easy for you to go live. at that point when you decide you want to. It's also very reasonably priced. So, any other questions? Well, thank you very much.